When I got asked to come speak at the banquet, my first thought was, oh, they must be like hard up for like a guest speaker. Then I saw that during Price is Right, they weren't giving away the real prizes on the screens. I was like, oh, they're just on a serious budget here, so I get it. So it's great to be here with you. If I'm honest, I'm going to say something really honest to you, which let me just say, hopefully you know that most things I say to you are honest, but I can't guarantee all of them. But if I'm really honest, when I first got asked to speak here, I was like honored and excited. It's interesting having a church like this that, because of my time here, kind of feels like home, even though I've never actually like been like I didn't like go through a membership class. I know I wasn't like one of the real MRAC people, but it does feel a little bit like coming home. At the same time, the other side of the coin is just like totally candid here. And I think there are many pastors who aren't like this, but many pastors who would resonate with this. And I won't look at your pastors while I say this, but if I'm totally straight up with you guys, my least favorite preaching to do ever, or speaking, is holiday speaking. And I'm not kidding. That's like totally true. Like Christmas, it's like, yeah, we know the guy got born, It's like it happened. Thanksgiving, oh my goodness, that's even worse. Even like Easter and Good Friday is like cooler, but it's still like, man, like, how am I going to say something that people aren't like, yeah, we know, he died, he comes back, it's cool, it's like spoiler, Ryan. So I'm not promising you anything really profound tonight, but I will actually say this, even though that is kind of my normal attitude and disposition, for sure it's not these guys. Your pastors just love speaking to you no matter what the topic is all the time, 100%. But even though that's my usual posture, disposition about like, oh, Christmas message or whatever, I actually, in the last little while, I had a bit of a break, and so I had a fair amount of time to just kind of sit with this idea that it's like I'm going to speak once in December. And really like actually, this is probably like kind of one of my favorite periods in a while of like kind of looking forward to speaking. Now again, I'm not trying to raise the expectation, like don't do that either, but it's like I'm really pumped to get to speak with you guys tonight about this. So thank you so much for having me. It feels like I'm back home with family. Christmas is a pretty interesting time of year, right? Like, we're doing this thing and it's been going on for a while and we have all these interesting traditions. There are a lot of like ideas, traditions, routines, things that happen at Christmas. Some are like really deep and serious. Some are maybe not as serious or true. I'm going to kind of throw something out there, and you don't have to you can shout it out if you do know, but this is more of a rhetorical question just so you don't embarrass yourself. But I'm wondering if you know how many times in the Bible it's recorded that angels sing. How many times in the Bible do angels sing? You can lock in your answer. How many accounts of angels singing in the Bible are there? The answer is, pastor's table got it. Would have been embarrassing if they didn't. The answer is 0. There's no record ever of angels singing in the Bible. But we sing a lot of songs about it. It's awkward if we're singing a song later, but I'm not like against the songs about it. It's fine. But it's like Kyle's back there. He's like, oh shoot, we got like angels we've heard. And it's like, hark the herald. But, we got lots of ideas, right? I don't know if you know this, but in the Bible, it doesn't mention any stable that Jesus is born in. This idea of like 3 wise men, there's actually like no number, and there's kind of some of the stuff we do with the wise men stories. It's we've done a lot with that. There's no innkeeper mentioned in the Bible. You know that? That guy, like he just like snuck into the biblical text, and he doesn't even exist, right? Like he's like, it's like you're watching like a movie and the credits, it's like Mel Gibson. It's like, what? He wasn't in this movie. It's like just some character that wasn't actually there. There are a lot of things like that we talk about at Christmas that aren't even actually like listed. Like Mary doesn't say she rode on a donkey. She's probably like a total boss that just like walked the whole way. Jesus, no crying he made. Yeah, right? Some people have had kids here. Like for sure crying, the meconium, all of it. If you don't know what meconium is, you might be out of touch. It might have been a while, but it's like all of it, all of that. But now that I've decimated everyone's like Christmas magic, this is the nice thing about being a guest speaker. Like, I can't get fired. Well, Steve already handed me the big check. But there are some like really cool, beautiful things. There was actually a star. For those of you wondering, there was a star, this amazing sign about this new king being born. There were shepherds that angels came and proclaimed to, said to, and told about Jesus. And they went and they worshiped this new king that was born. And there were these like foretellings throughout scripture, throughout history of like this coming king that would change things and would restore the world. And some of these foretellings are pretty famous and kind of, I don't know if any of you have ever read the whole book of Isaiah. It's 66 chapters. It's quite long and a hard read, and props to you if you've done it. If you haven't, I'd encourage you, you can do it. 2025 can be your year. But in the middle of it, we know some verses. In Isaiah 7:14, you've probably heard this before. It's pretty classic, happens a lot at Christmas. Isaiah 7:14. There's this writing that says, "Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Immanuel." Immanuel. And this gets like reaffirmed in the New Testament when you read in Matthew chapter 1. It's hard turning my Bible when I'm holding this handheld mic, but in Matthew chapter 1, Matthew reflects back on this ancient writing when he's talking in Matthew 1 about Jesus being born. And he says, "The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Immanuel." And fortunately, most of us are like, what's Immanuel? But Matthew answers that for us. He's like, oh, glad you asked. Which means God with us. Immanuel, God with us. Now, some of you have probably heard the word Immanuel before, especially if you've been around the church for a while, or maybe even driving down the street and you've seen churches called Immanuel. There are a lot of churches called Immanuel. It's this interesting word. In fact, you've maybe seen it spelled two different ways, and some of you have maybe thought, are pastors just that bad at spelling that like some of them don't know how to spell it, like some do it with an I or an E? You guys, they don't have masters in English literature to become pastors, okay? Most of them have this it's called a Masters of Divinity, which is like a kind of a weird, crazy flex, if you ask me. It's like, oh, what are you a master of? Divinity, no big deal. But anyways, if you're like, they don't know how to spell. These come from like kind of the Greek and Hebrew origin and stuff like that. But this word Immanuel, you'll see it all over the place. You'll see churches name this and stuff like this. And the question is like, what is this? Now, I could spend the next however many minutes elegantly with my incredible words explaining to you what Immanuel is and trying to parse the text of the Bible and talk about all these theological concepts and wow you with how like insanely intelligent I am and paint these word pictures and you just be like, wow, that was amazing. Or else, what's slightly better than that is we could leave it to a much stronger depiction of what Immanuel is that is captured only in the genius and the depth of the cinematic prowess of Adam Sandler in the movie Mr. Deeds. So check this clip out right here.
So this is where my uncle lives?
Yes, sir, for the last 35 years of his astonishing life.
Oh, you kind of snuck up on me there.
I am very, very sneaky, sir.
I see that. Jeez, Crow, how'd you get down here so fast?
Sneaky, sneaky, sir. Right this way.
Oh, I love it. That's Hawaiian punch.
He adores Hawaiian punch.
Wow! You kind of just snuck up on me there, man.
I fear you're underestimating the sneakiness, sir.
You guys seen that movie? It's a pretty old movie now. It's great. I didn't know we were doing Price is Right tonight, and all I just kept thinking is like, the price is wrong, Bob, from Happy Gilmore. Anybody? No, it was okay. I'm not like suggesting movies here. I didn't check the IMDb parent guide before I showed it. But Mr. Deeds, he's got this butler, and he just like shows up, and he shows up, and he shows up, and he's just like always there, even when Adam Sandler, is his name Mr. Deeds? Wait, even when they don't know he's around, he's just showing up, and he's just there. And recently, I've been pretty surprised and reminded by just that, like that here-ness or that nearness, the presence of God, what Immanuel actually means for my life. A lot of us think a lot of things when we think about God, and we have different ideas and different things that we like to hold on to from the Bible. If you've been around the church for a while, you've probably often heard people like use, especially if you're from a more charismatic tradition, but these different Jehovah names for God from the Bible. Like most of us really like Jehovah Jireh, like God provides for me, right? It's like, oh, God the provider, Jehovah Jireh, right? Some people were like Jehovah Rapha, God the healer, the Lord is our healer. There's one Jehovah Nisi, it means God is our banner. If I'm honest, I actually have no idea what the heck that means. And maybe you're like, yeah, I can leave the God the banner one. Like, I don't need a banner, right? But there's this name for God throughout the Old Testament, Jehovah Shammah, long before this idea of Immanuel shows up, that God is with us. The Lord your God is near. And it's such a beautiful picture. And I think it's easy in this room for all of us to be like, yeah, that's true. God is with us. Immanuel, God is here. God is with us. In life, I kind of think about two areas of like our own personal theology, and I kind of compare them by calling them practical theology and practiced theology. Practical theology are all the things that I can tell you that I know and think are true about God. Practiced theology are the things that I find out that I actually believe when life and circumstances and situations show up. And I've been challenged a lot over the years where it's like, either by people or God or experiences where it's like, Ryan, you don't actually believe. And it's especially convicting when you're a person who gets up on stage with a mic a lot and you've preached a text over and over and over and you've beat it to death. And all of a sudden you encounter the situation, you're like, oh, I don't know if I really grasped the idea, the full depth of Immanuel. God is with us. It's this idea all throughout Scripture. I wonder what it would look like. Like, what would happen in our lives if we really, not just practically, but through our practice, actually believed that in every single moment of our life, whether we're at work, we're parenting, we're at a church gathering, we're drinking a fruit punch fountain, which sounds heavenly if you ask me. Whatever we're doing, we're aware of God's incredible presence all around us. What would change in our lives? What would happen? One of the things I love about Immanuel is, it's a word that we mostly hear around Christmas, right? It's kind of like, oh, come, Immanuel. It's like, and even that song to me is funny. Oh, come, Immanuel. Like, oh, come, God. Like, because the idea in Scripture is that God has always been Immanuel. He's always been Jehovah Shammah. He's always been present. He's always been with his people. He says to Joshua time and time again, the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. No matter what you're doing, dude, he is always with you. What would change in my life if I actually took that seriously? I think it would change a lot. It would probably change some of the choices I make, some of the ways I speak. If I was like, oh, God's right here, bro. Like, like when you're driving, all of a sudden there's a police officer beside you and you like go into panic mode. You're like, what am I doing wrong? Am I like, it's like, and it's like, I would probably think more about what I was doing. I'd probably make different choices. I'd probably spend things differently. I'd probably experience more peace. Things would be really different. If you know me and you've spent at least 3 minutes with me, or if we're connected on social media, you have to know that I am really passionate about cold plunging, okay? There are probably many people in this room that I've invited to come to my house and sit in this tub of cold water in my backyard with me. Not like at the same time, just like that'd be weird. But, the rest of this isn't weird at all, just whatever. We do that at church, right? 2 people get in a bathtub in front of people every few months and they dunk each other. It's like, it's not that weird, right? But I've probably invited some of you to come cold plunging. I've told you. I think what happened was over the years, I saw how vegans and CrossFitters had this thing they're trying to convert the world to, and I was like, I need something like that. So I started cold plunging so that I could try to convert the world to that. I love cold plunging. Now, there are many things I love about cold plunging. There are some things I don't like. When I talk about with people, just to be clear, when I talk about with people cold plunging, they're like, I don't like the cold, and I'm like, just so you know. None of us do either. Like, cold plungers don't like it's not like we're like, oh man, it's just too hot in December. I want to go sit. Like, it's not that. That's not one of the things I love. I hate the cold. But some of the things I love, one of the things I love a lot is that the only way to successfully sit up to your neck in 2-degree water in the middle of January, sometimes even colder, but I don't want to freak you guys out too much, but in 2-degree water, the only way to do it is by controlling your breath and slowing down your breathing and breathing right. That's why I invite people to do it with me, because if you just jump in, you're like, it doesn't work. You have to connect with your breath, and your breath is what actually makes it possible to cold plunge. By the way, if you ever want to try cold plunging, I got a tub in my backyard. The staff have my email, my phone number. I would be so happy to talk you through the breathing. I'd love to. Don't worry, I'm not vegan, so it's okay. I won't try to convert you to that, but love to have you. But you have to slow down your breath. Breath is like this really powerful thing that we don't think about very often, except right now everybody's kind of thinking about their breathing right now because I'm talking about not thinking about your breathing. And even as you now try to stop thinking about your breathing, you're going to think about it more because you're anyways. But we don't really think about it. We don't think about it very much. Although, on the list of basic needs, it never gets listed. Like we think about food, water, shelter, Netflix, the basic human needs, the things that we need to survive. We don't think about breathing much, which is weird, because if I was like, hey, can you go longer without water or shelter? I think most people would be like, I think I could go longer without shelter. I don't want to. But if I was like, could you go longer without food or water? Most of us would be like, I'd probably rather just eat and just die of thirst. I don't want to go without food. But if I was like, what about breath? Could you go longer without breathing air into your lungs or without drinking water? I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? I have some friends, breath work is pretty trendy nowadays. I have some friends who, I'm not really into this, but some friends who do breath work every day. Some of them can hold their breath for 3 minutes, which if that doesn't sound very long to you, feel free to set a timer and go ahead and try while I'm talking. We'll call an ambulance in 3 minutes because you'll be done. But it's they're really into this. But when I'm in the tub, when I'm sitting in the water, I slow down my breathing, and I do some breath prayers, and I really become aware of what's going on in this breathing. And one of the things that I think is so cool about breath, which is exactly why you came to a Christmas banquet, is to find out what this cheap Captain Hook knockoff looking guy thinks about breath. But one of the things I think is so cool about breath is if you read the Bible, which I hope you do, it's amazing, but if you read the Bible, the very first line of the Bible, we all know in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, but it continues on in that first line, and it says that God's Spirit was hovering over the waters. Now, and I like to imagine those are cold waters that we're all plunging in for 3 minutes, but it was, but God's Spirit, the Hebrew word that we have these ancient languages that the Bible's translated from. The ancient Hebrew word for spirit is ruach. I'm probably not very good at pronouncing it. It's ruach, and it's translated spirit to represent God's Spirit, but it's tricky, these translations, because probably one of the best translations or kind of pictures of that word is breath. Breath. God's breath hovered above the waters. His Spirit, his breath. And he began to speak and breathe life into the world, and God's breath went into life. And as life came, our breath started to enter our lungs. And one of the things I love about this when I'm sitting in the tub, or sometimes I just slow down and slow my breathing, it's just one of the most tangible reminders that God is with me. Every breath I take, every time I inhale, every time I exhale, there's this reminder that God's breath, his ruach, his Spirit, Immanuel, Jehovah Shammah, is with me, and he's present with me. In the really good things, the times we forget to stop and thank God, and then the hard times, the times we choose to be mad at God, right? It's we forget, and God's always with us. When I speak places, one of the challenges, and I'm sure others, pastors can relate to this, is sometimes you it's hard to decide between how general you are about a topic, so that it kind of applies, and maybe how specific you are about a topic. Usually I go general. I'm going to go a little bit more specific, because what I'd like to do is share with you guys a little bit about my experience right now, what God's doing in my life, and hopefully it connects. If not, Tom's got a banger coming up on Sunday, so that'll be way better. So you do, right? You better. Well, no pressure now. I recently took some time off to kind of reconnect with some things about my life. I went on a 4-week retreat, which is a pretty crazy thing to do as an adult. And through that time, I got to do a lot of different things, but I had some time in some different groups and therapy and stuff like that, and just getting to process through some life things that I had not really paused and slowed down to do in a long time. And one of the things I've really started to discover over the past season is kind of a tendency that I've had in my life, a pattern that I've had in my life, that when hard experiences that carry hard emotions or feelings come toward me, that I do everything I can to avoid, distract, numb, gloss over. I think the correct word is repress those feelings and try to move into something that feels better. What's interesting about this is when I say it that way, it sounds negative. But for a lot of people, and I'd say particularly men and men in leadership positions in the 21st century and even in churches, is that I think we often get applauded for doing that. Not just men, but I think it happens a lot. We often get applauded for doing that. I'm not going to try to blame like my surroundings, or like I don't know what the mixture is between like my own decisions and the things that I've experienced in life for that. But I've done a lot of that, where I've just kind of been like, oh, let's get to the good emotion. And when I can be strong and steady and put on a smile in adversity, people applaud you and be like, oh, you're so solid. But the reality is that every part of my life, every part of my God-given life is a part of my life that God's given me that he wants to be present in. And I've discovered that when I'm repressing things and when I'm trying to run away from things and hide things and gloss over things, what I'm glossing over are experiences that Immanuel is actually present in me with. This really profound thing happened for me. And I say profound for me because some of you might be like, Ryan, this is like emotional maturity 2+2. And I'm like, yes, I'm trying to catch up, right? Have any of you read the book Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Peter Scazzaro? Of course, the pastor table has, but it's a great book. If you ever read that book was written for me. That book points out and addresses probably my biggest issue or struggle or failing in life. And that is that move to kind of repress emotions and try to gloss over it and say that things are good. I had this counseling session, and I came out of it just with this statement. We did this like visualization thing, going back to some past experiences, which if you asked me a few months ago, I'd be like, that sounds so weird, Ryan, so I'm with you guys who think that sounds weird. But I left it, and I just left with this statement. It was this: it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad. And again, many of us would be like, yeah, well, logically I'd say that. But how many of us allow ourselves to just say, it's okay? I would so often like watch a show, pull up my phone, or just turn to things, or like eat something or whatever to try to be like, I got to get away from that and hide that, rather than just saying it's okay to be sad. And the reason it's okay to be sad is not some 2024 like reason that's like, oh, you know what, it's all about you or anything like that. It's okay to be sad because God is present with you in your sadness. And maybe like me, some of the people here tonight just need to hear that it's okay to be sad. And God's hanging out with you in that. Life's pretty hard sometimes, right? It's also okay to be happy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of times we really just like try to cling toward that. And I mean, the joy of the Lord is our strength. That's all true and stuff. But you grow up in church and it's like, I grew up in church in the 90s and it's like, Lord, I lift your name on high. I'm so glad to sing your praises. It's like, what about like, Lord, I lift your name on high? My wife and I just had a huge fight and I'm so frustrated. Or like, what about like, Lord, I lift your name on high, but my job just sucks and I'm frustrated and I'm losing hope. Like, what about, Lord, I lift your name on high even though things aren't going that well? I mean, there are those moments where it's like, Lord, I lift your name on high. We just gave birth to a new child, or I made a new friend, or things are going great in this area of life. But I glossed over a lot of that. Now, that's quite specific. And maybe some of you are like, yeah, Ryan, I'm already like way more emotionally mature than you. And that honestly probably doesn't take that much at this season of life, if I'm actually really honest with you. But I wonder what it is for you that you're like, where do we neglect that God just wants to be Immanuel in those spaces? Is it work? Is it certain behaviors? Is it certain activities? Is it certain ideas? Is it how we spend our money? Is it how we spend our time? Or maybe for you it is like me, where you're like, no, it's okay. God is with me when I'm sad. He's with me when I'm disappointed. He's with me when a friend betrays me. He's with me when things don't kind of pan out the way I expected them to do. God is Immanuel. I love that scripture. We talk about this at Christmas. I think a lot of times we're like, oh, Jesus got born, so like Immanuel. From Genesis 1 to Revelation 22, Jehovah Shammah, Immanuel, God with us, this presence, the nearness and the here-ness of God. However you celebrate Christmas, great, go for it, do it. But I hope like beyond all of that this idea of Immanuel is something that we're just like, what would happen if I actually just not took God everywhere, but realized that even if I don't want him there, even if I'm just trying to take a drink from a fruit punch fountain, just knowing it's like sneaky, sneaky God is just like, God's like, you've underestimated my sneakiness, I want to do something a little different. I've never done this. I don't think it's that crazy. If it is, I apologize, to wrap up here. And I want to actually like invite you right now where you are into my cold plunge tub with me, okay? So just stick with me. We're not actually, you're like looking around. Is there a big pool coming in and stuff like that? I want to invite you into my tub with me right now. And here's the reason why. When I'm in my tub, I love slowing down my breath. I learn a lot about myself. But what I get to participate in is an ancient practice. I do this a lot. It's my prayer sanctuary. This ancient practice called breath prayers, where you slow down and you breathe in part of a prayer and you breathe out part of a prayer. Now, if what I'm about to suggest feels too weird for you, just don't do it. It's all good. No worries. It's like Costco samples. They're not serving what you like. Just pass by. You love it? You can find me again. We'll cold plunge sometime, So it's like, anybody ever do that? You get the sample, you go around, you take off your hat and you come back. It's like, oh, what's this? I've never even heard of these things. Cool. I'm super interested in maybe considering buying this product later. Why don't you tell me more about it while I eat an extra one or something? Okay. Anyways, we're going to try something. This ancient practice called breath prayers. One of my favorite ones to do is just take Jesus' prayer in Matthew 6 and slow down, and it slows down my prayers. And I breathe in, Our Father. I can't actually do it because if I did, I'd be like, Our Father. It's like, so I say it in my head, and Our Father, I breathe in, I hold it in heaven. And I just move slowly through it. Through this kind of like past season where God's really been like challenging some things in my world, like in a big way. One of the breath prayers that I've been using a lot is really focused around this idea of God's presence, of Immanuel. And so what I say on the inhale is, God, thank you for being with me. And in the exhale, I say, in whatever. For me, particularly in this season, it's been important to say, in my sadness, in my bitterness. The Bible doesn't say, hey, God's Immanuel when you've got your stuff together, or God's Immanuel only when you're happy. God doesn't have like hours of operation on this. He's not like, hey, 8:30 to 4:30, Mondays to Fridays, lunch hours off, stat holidays are off. If a queen dies, we'll probably take a day off for that too. Sorry, is that too soon? Okay, but it's like, it's always not based on your performance, not based on how good you are, not based on if you're happy enough or sad, like none of that. God's just Immanuel all the time. So I've developed this breath prayer that I've been doing a lot. It's been really important to me. God, thank you for being with me in my job, in the parenting struggles I'm going through, in the issues I'm having with my teenagers. Good things too. God, thank you for being with me in the success of my business. God, thank you for being with me in this relationship that's going really well. So here's what I want to do. I would love to invite you to close your eyes and picture yourself. For some reason you decided, I'm going to go to this nice environment, and Ryan set up this tub full of 5-degree water. I'm going to go step in and sit in it. You sit down and you have to slow your breathing down. I'd love to invite you to just slow your breathing down for a second. And I want to invite you, we're going to do 3 of that breath prayer. It's really simple. And if you don't want to do it, everyone's eyes are closed, and we're going to do it silently so no one will know if you ever did it or not. But this is just an invitation if this might actually be a meaningful experience for you. Slow down your breathing. What I'd love for us to do is I'll guide us through this. I'll say, inhale, God, thank you for being with me in. And as you inhale, you can just pray that in your head. And then on the exhale, say exhale in, and then you can say whatever you want, in whatever that is. I'd love to invite you, like I'm talking about something specific, about hard emotional experiences, but maybe take a second right now to say, God, what is it that I am forgetting that you're present in? That this Christmas season, maybe moving into 2025, I need to slow down and breathe sometimes and remember that your spirit, your breath is always with me. So if you want to participate, just in your head, you can breathe along and you can say the same thing 3 times. You can say a different thing each time. You can say whatever you want. And then I'll pray for us after that. So go ahead and inhale. God, thank you for being with me. And then exhale in, whatever you'd like to say. Another one. Inhale. God, thank you for being with me. And exhale in. And the last one. Inhale. God, thank you for being with me. And exhale in. God, I'm so grateful that in the high moments of my life and in the low moments of my life, when I feel like I'm on the mountaintop, when I feel like I'm in the bottom of a valley, when things are hard, when things are good, that you're always with me, and that all of those experiences and moments of life are valuable parts of the life that you created for me to live in your presence. Thank you that Immanuel isn't just an observation about who you are, but it's a promise that all of us can hold on to, that you are always with us. God, would you help us live with the conviction of knowing that you're present in the decisions, the choices, the paths that we take. In the high moments when we might forget to be grateful, remind us you're there providing. And in the low moments where we might want to turn to frustration or doubt, remind us that you're there holding those emotions, those feelings, and those experiences with us. God, I thank you that from the beginning to the end, that you are a God who always is consistently, never-endingly with us. We love you, Jesus. Amen.